The reason a brilliant plan often collapses into procrastination isn't a lack of motivation. It's a hidden, powerful force draining your energy. We're going to show you the scientific system for diagnosing and eliminating the invisible barriers that kill your productivity. Let's dive in.
Just think about that for a second. We have all been there. You've got a great idea, a solid plan. You genuinely want to get it done. But when it's go time, you just don't. And then what happens? You blame yourself, right? Your discipline, your motivation. But what if the problem isn't inside you at all? What if it's in the world around you? In the extra 3 clicks it takes to open a file, or the vague way you wrote down your to-do list. All those tiny little decisions you have to make before you can even begin the real work. This is the core paradox we're going to tear down today. The biggest thing standing in your way isn't willpower. It's all the tiny, invisible bits of resistance in your environment. It's a force called execution friction.
So here's the game plan. We're going to go on a journey to engineer that friction right out of your life. First, we'll shine a light on this hidden productivity killer. Then, we'll diagnose the problem like a scientist. After that, we'll unpack the entire friction mapping framework, look at the cool neuroscience that makes it work, and then, this is the best part, give you a tactical 3-step plan you can use today. And finally, we'll talk about designing a system that's truly effortless. Okay, let's start by figuring out what the real issue is. It's time to stop just treating the symptoms, like procrastination, and actually target the root cause. This is about completely shifting how you think about what holds you back. I really want you to let this one sink in because it's the most important idea we're going to talk about. The problem is not some personal failing. It's not a character flaw. It is a design flaw in your system. We're all constantly fighting against these invisible forces, tiny barriers in our environment, mental hurdles, you name it. And on their own, each one seems like no big deal. But together, they create this powerful current of resistance that just drains your energy before you even start. The goal isn't to build a stronger willpower muscle to fight that current. No way. The goal is to become an engineer, to redesign the riverbed itself so the current of your action flows exactly where you want it to go without any effort. All right, let's move into the diagnostic phase. We're going to put some scientific names to these invisible forces. Because look, to defeat an enemy, you first have to see it, you have to name it, and you have to understand its game plan. We're about to put the invisible under a microscope. The first big concept is systemic inertia. You remember from physics class, right? An object at rest wants to stay at rest. Well, think about that with your goals. Systemic inertia is that feeling of being stuck, that overwhelming sense that starting is just too hard. But here's the thing, it isn't one giant wall. It's a wall built brick by tiny brick from every little obstacle. That messy desk, the laptop that isn't charged, that vague to-do item that just says work on project, that notification that pulls you away for just a sec. Each one is another brick in that wall, stopping your momentum dead in its tracks. So how do you beat inertia? You've got to apply energy. In science, they call this activation energy, the juice you need to get a reaction started. For us, it's the mental startup cost of any task. It's the brain power you burn just to get the engine running. A simple, well-designed task, that's got super low activation energy. It's like striking a match. But a task that's loaded with friction, the activation energy is through the roof. Just thinking about finding the right file, remembering a password, and figuring out the first step, that alone can be so exhausting, you burn all your fuel before you've even turned the key. So you just give up.
And that brings us to ego depletion. See, your brain's command center for focus and decision-making is the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. But here's the catch. Think of its power not like a giant power plant, but like a small battery on your phone. It starts each day fully charged. But every single tiny decision, should I check this email? Where'd I save that file? What's the next step? It drains that battery. When your environment is full of friction, you're forcing your brain to make hundreds of these tiny, pointless decisions. So by the time you get to the actual important work, your battery's already in the red. That's ego depletion. It's not laziness, it's literally cognitive burnout from a badly designed system.
Okay, so we've got the diagnosis: systemic inertia, sky-high activation energy, and ego depletion. Now let's talk about the cure. And we're not going to fight this with brute force. We're going to solve it with engineering. This is the execution friction mapping framework. This framework is a simple 3-part system. Think of it like a surgeon: diagnose, identify, and remove. First, we're going to deconstruct the entire process to make the invisible visible. Second, we'll classify and measure the friction so we know exactly what we're up against. And third, we'll run the subtraction protocol to surgically remove those barriers. Let's break them down. Phase 1 is all about making the invisible visible. I need you to become a ruthless analyst of your own life here. Pick a task you always put off. Let's say writing a report. A normal to-do list just says, write report. That's totally useless. Instead, you're going to map out every single micro step. I mean, everything. Step 1, open laptop. Step 2, close the 15 tabs you left open. Step 3, find the project folder. Step 4, search for the right version of the document. Step 5, open it. Step 6, reread the last page because you forgot where you were. You map it all out like a flowchart. The whole point is to see every single spot where your precious mental energy is getting wasted on stuff that isn't the actual work. Okay, once you have your map, it's time for phase 2. You put on your detective hat. For every point of friction you found, you ask, what kind of barrier is this? Is it environmental? Something in your space, like a messy desk or a slow computer? Is it cognitive? A mental block, like not being sure what to do next? Or is it behavioral? A bad habit, like instinctively checking your phone? Then, and this is key, you give it a number. How much time does it cost you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much energy does it drain? This step is absolutely critical because it turns that vague feeling of, ugh, this is hard, into cold, hard data. And that data tells you exactly where to strike for the biggest impact. And that brings us to the final, most powerful phase, the subtraction protocol. Now notice we don't call it the friction management protocol. This is huge. The goal here isn't to just learn to live with friction. The goal is to aggressively, permanently, and ruthlessly eliminate it. You use your data to make structural fixes. This isn't about trying harder. It's about changing the system so you don't have to. You are literally engineering your environment so that the path of least resistance is the path to your goal. We want to get the activation energy for that task as close to zero as humanly possible. So we've covered the what of the framework, but now let's pull back the curtain on the why. Why is this so ridiculously effective? Well, the answer is all about how it works with your brain's natural programming, not against it. This is the neurological advantage. So picture this constant battle happening inside your head. When you face a high-friction task, your limbic system, that's the ancient emotional survival part of your brain, it just hits the panic button. It sees all that effort as a threat, and it screams, nope, this is too hard, avoid. It slams on the brakes with an emotional veto. And that feeling of resistance, that's procrastination. But when you engineer a low-friction path, you create this brilliant little hack. The task becomes so easy, so obvious, that it doesn't even set off the alarm. You completely bypass that emotional veto, and the right action becomes the default. It just happens, almost without you thinking about it. So how does this actually rewire your brain? Well, it works on 3 levels. First, by lowering that activation energy, you dodge the emotional no from your brain. The path is just too smooth to resist. Second, it saves your precious executive function. By getting rid of hundreds of pointless micro-decisions, you're saving your brain's battery for the deep work that really matters. No more ego depletion. And third, it uses the power of your environment. A well-designed system doesn't rely on your memory or discipline. The environment itself, that clean desk, that one folder on your desktop, becomes the trigger that automatically kicks off the right habit.
All right, theory is great, but let's be real. Results come from action. So we're shifting gears from the why to the how. This is your immediate 3-step plan. You can use this the second we're done here to go after your biggest productivity killer.
I want you to actually think about this. If you need to, pause for a second. Get brutally honest. What is that one important thing that you consistently push to tomorrow? Is it writing that proposal? Making those calls? Getting your workout in? Get it crystal clear in your mind. Name it, because we are going to target that specific task right now. Here's your battle plan. 3 simple, non-negotiable steps. First, map the failure point. Find the exact spot where things break down. Second, identify the single biggest barrier at that spot, and you implement a structural fix to get rid of it. And third, you anchor that new frictionless start to a habit you already have to make it automatic. Let's make this super concrete. Say your avoided task is work on the report, and your map shows that the biggest hurdle, the place you always stop, is just finding the dang file on your messy computer. That's an environmental barrier. So the fix isn't some vague promise to get organized. No, it's a surgical strike. You create a single folder on your otherwise empty desktop. You name it Quarterly Report, Start Here. You put the one and only file you need inside. And just like that, boom, the mental load of searching and choosing is gone. You've subtracted the barrier. the activation energy just plummeted. And the last step is to make this new, easy start completely automatic. We're going to use a powerful little trick called habit stacking. You just link your new, tiny action to a habit you already do without thinking. Your rule becomes, after I pour my morning coffee, the very next thing I will do is open the Start Here folder and write just one sentence. That's it. Notice what you're doing. You're not committing to finishing the whole report. You're just committing to a ridiculously easy, frictionless start. Because as we all know, an object in motion tends to stay in motion.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture here. This isn't just about finishing one task. This is a complete mind shift in how you think about productivity, performance, and getting stuff done. It's about becoming the architect of your own focus.
If you only take one single thing away from our time together today, please let it be this. Your productivity is a consequence of your environmental design, not your effort. I'm going to say that again. Your productivity is a consequence of your design, not your effort. Stop blaming your willpower. Stop trying to hustle your way through a broken system. Your focus and your energy are your most valuable assets. Don't waste them fighting invisible friction every single day. Instead, invest that energy one time to build a system where doing the right thing becomes the easiest thing to do. So let's recap this whole masterclass. Execution friction mapping. It solves that deep problem of systemic inertia and that feeling of being paralyzed by too many choices. And why that matters is that it gives you a systematic way to finally see and eliminate all those hidden barriers that kill your focus. Using the process deconstruction and the subtraction protocol, you build a framework that bypasses your brain's emotional veto and saves a massive amount of your precious executive function. The final takeaway is this. Productivity isn't about doing more. It's about mastering systems that make focus effortless. So here's your challenge. Today, take that one task, map its failure point, find the biggest piece of friction, and engineer it out of existence. Go be the architect of your own focus.